The movie kicks off with Abigail lost in her ballet practice, spinning gracefully in an empty theater. She's clueless that a bunch of bad guys were plotting to kidnap her right now. In the shadows, a hacker cuts off the security cameras at her home, while a sniper takes position on the roof. Unaware of any danger, Abigail leaves the theater and hops into her car with her trusted driver. The criminals have already stuck a tracker under the car, and as soon as the car starts, they were on the move. The hacker unlocks Abigail's house doors with a few clicks, and 3 gang members sneak in, hiding behind curtains and under the bed. One woman in the group hesitates, not usually one to kidnap kids, but her companions insist that she goes along with it. Abigail arrives home exhausted from dancing and crashes on her bed, unaware of the lurking danger. Suddenly the gang attacks and Abigail stabs one with a pencil, but another covers her mouth and drags her away. The woman stops the injured guy from hitting Abigail more and injects a sedative, knocking her out. Outside, the rest of the gang waits nervously, and a lookout signals an approaching car. The sniper watches as they stuff Abigail into a bag and slip out through a window. They then run across the garden and alarms blare, but their getaway car shows up just in time. They toss the bag in and speed off, and during the escape, they check Abigail's breathing and blindfold her, and near a busy intersection, the hacker directs the driver to avoid it, and they hide their van behind a large truck, barely avoiding detection. They head to an old mansion outside the city, where Lambert, the boss, waits, and they handcuff Abigail to the old bed. And Lambert lays down the rules, no personal details and no causing troubles. He then takes everyone's phone to prevent tracking and gives every member a nickname from the Rat Pack, easing the tension with some humor. Once Lambert leaves, the mood lightens and the team raids the liquor cabinet and throws a little party. Joey, a candy lover, refuses to share with Dean. Dean, always trying to act smart, tries to dig into everyone's past but fails, getting teased by Joey. Surprisingly, Joey figures out their backgrounds just by watching them, and Frank was a detective, Peter a not-so-smart mob enforcer, Sammy a rich hacker in it for the fun, Rickles was the ex-Marine sniper, and Dean was a crazy driver. Frank guesses Joey might be battling addiction, and Joey checks on Abigail, who's upset by the tight blindfold and handcuffs. Joey adjusts them to make her more comfortable, reassuring her that no harm will come to her, and they just want the ransom. Joey shares that she has a son, and Abigail admits her father might not care enough to pay, and before Joey leaves, Abigail apologizes for what might happen next. Concerned, Joey tells Frank, suggesting that Abigail's father might be dangerous, and Frank dismisses it as Abigail messing with Joey. Distracted, Frank sneaks off to check on Abigail himself, and he finds her without the blindfold and under pressure. She reveals her father as Christophe Lazar, a notorious crime lord. Panicked, Frank declares he's out, and the gang demands an explanation. Frank reveals Abigail's father as Christophe Lazar, sending chills through the room. Joey and Rickles understand the gravity, sharing Frank's fear, and they argue but decide to stay, hoping that the ransom would help them escape, and they agree to keep a close watch and lock all the doors. Later, Joey hears a noise and finds a window open, and she notices an old statue of a father and child, reminding her of her own situation, and suddenly Rickles appears, flirting, but quickly changing to say he doesn't trust the others. They agree to watch each other's backs, and meanwhile, Sammy finds a TV room, but gets scared when Dean pranks her. Dean then draws on Peter's sleeping face with a marker. Exploring the house, Dean finds old photos, one resembling Abigail. And in the basement kitchen, a door swings open, and entering, he's startled by a rat, but something unseen grabs his leg, pulling him back. Sammy rushes to the basement, finding Dean unnaturally seated at a table. His head gruesomely falls off, making her scream and vomit. The gang arrives, deciding that weak Sammy couldn't have done it, and the scene reminds them of Lazar's hitman, Valdez, known for clean, ruthless kills. They recall the chilling story of Lazar's gang members being found decapitated in a security hotel room before their trial. Spurred by fear, they check on Abigail, finding her unharmed, and Rickles realizes Valdez's deadly reputation might catch up to them, and pickled, he tries to escape but finds a barred gate. Peter's efforts to open it trigger a security system, and shutters clamp down over all windows, trapping them inside. Joey figures out they're trapped, and Rickles checks his weapon stash but finds it gone. Worried, Joey rushes to Abigail, asking if she's seen anyone else, and Abigail swears that she hasn't seen anybody, but she also shares some disturbing information. Frank has threatened her, claimed that he was employed by her father, and even said his actual name was Valdez. Bewildered and frightened, Joey meets up with Rickles to discuss what they've discovered, but it doesn't add up. They decide to check for another exit, and as Joey departs to check out an old sound, she looks back to see Rickles standing unusually still. When she gets closer, she was terrified to discover that he's been savagely assaulted. His body falls into her arms, and she carefully places him down before running downstairs. Joey confronts Frank with anger, accusing him of being the killer Valdez and murdering Rickles. Frank, unyielding, pulls out his own weapon and accuses Abigail of deceiving Joey. He instructs Peter to eliminate the girl, and just as Peter targets Abigail, Joey intervenes and disarms him. Sammy and Frank hurry in, and a heated dispute ensues. Amid the turmoil, Abigail easily removes her handcuffs and suddenly unveils her true identity with a quick ballet move. Apparently, she is a vampire. She pounces on Peter, but before she can bite, Frank shoots her, and everyone freezes as Abigail, unscathed, stands up with the bullet wound healing before their eyes. Joey also shoots her at this point, but it was completely futile. The bullets don't affect her, and in a state of panic, they barricade themselves away, and they realize that Abigail, not Frank, was Valdez all along. The mansion was a stronghold with doors secured by magnetic locks and windows shielded by thick shutters. Sammy confesses that she can't bypass them, and as the tension escalates, Peter calls for peace, but Frank, pushed to his breaking point, forcibly silences him. The tension mounts as Frank and Joey arm themselves with makeshift stakes from a pool cue while Sammy rummages the kitchen for garlic. However, Joey was concerned that harming Abigail might provoke her powerful father, and ready but nervous, they storm into Abigail's room only to find it deserted. Lured by distant music, they follow the sound to another room where a horrifying sight awaits them. Abigail was dancing with Dean's lifeless body. Initially, Abigail feigns innocence, but she quickly abandons the pretense when Sammy attacks her with garlic, which apparently had no effect. Frank tries to step in, but is easily brushed off, while Peter tries to restrain her, only to be tossed aside. Abigail snatches the cross from Peter's neck and presses it against his chest, revealing another letdown for the group. Crosses don't frighten her either, and in a desperate move, Frank tries to attack her from behind, but Abigail was too fast, disarming him and stabbing him in the leg. Defeated, the trio retreats downstairs, where Joey attends to their wounds, and Joey remembers that the sedative injection worked during their initial abduction of Abigail, and that they still have one left. They decide to split up, agreeing to communicate through earpieces, with Joey ready to use the syringe on Abigail once found. As they explore the mansion, Sammy ventures down a neglected corridor and is startled by a swarm of bats. Her shock sends her tumbling into a pool, which, to her terror, is filled with decaying bodies. Struggling, she crawls out, covered in filth and dread. Meanwhile, Abigail catches Peter off guard, and he flees in terror, manages to lock a door behind him, but Abigail was relentless, breaking through the door and continuing her chase. In a frantic moment, Frank accidentally strikes Peter, sending him tumbling down from a railing, and the chase doesn't stop as Abigail then pursues Frank, pursuing him down the stairs. As she pins him down, Joey seizes her moment, attempting to inject Abigail, but with a swift motion, Abigail knocks the syringe from her hand, sending it flying out of reach. Sammy intervenes, pulling Abigail back, but Abigail viciously bites her arm. As Abigail grabs Frank by the leg and tries to take off, Peter jumps into action, tackling her in mid-air, making her release Frank. Peter holds Abigail down long enough for Joey to grab the syringe and inject the sedative, stopping Abigail's taunts as she succumbs to the drug. In the meantime, as Sammy grapples with the fear of becoming a vampire, Abigail finds herself trapped in an elevator. Joey presents her with a choice: divulge the mansion's escape route or remain a captive, and unexpectedly, Abigail admits to orchestrating the entire ordeal, with Lambert being merely a pawn in her scheme. She exposes intimate details about each group member's past wrongdoings against her father or his gang, and Sammy's illicit career began by embezzling from her affluent parents, and Peter was a crime family enforcer who betrayed his own, and Frank, once a detective, crossed the line into criminality, and Joey, an army medic, turned to illegal medicine after succumbing to addiction. Abigail claims vengeance from these transgressions, offering mercy to only 2 members. Joey perceives Abigail's actions as a misguided quest for her father's approval, and Abigail enjoys the thrill of manipulation, likening her victims to hunted prey. The tension escalates when Frank suggests killing Abigail, and in response, she adjusts her offer, promising freedom to the one who aids her escape. Panic-stricken, Peter draws his gun despite Joey and Frank's realization that Abigail's promise is false. To prevent Peter's release of the vampire, Joey shoots him, and Frank remains behind, striking a deal with Abigail for the escape route. However, she demands release in return, and unfazed by Frank's refusal, Abigail forcibly breaks the elevator door and lunges at him, and Joey intervenes, allowing the sunlight to penetrate the room, causing Abigail to retreat. Joey and Frank escape, regrouping in the library, bathed in sunlight. Sammy exposes relief at not transforming into a vampire, and following Abigail's clue, Frank pulls out an Agatha Christie's book, but nothing happens. Frustration mounts as Frank loses his temper and Joey grows anxious. Joey then shares her motivation, using the job's earrings for a fresh start and reuniting with her son. This sparks an idea in Sammy to locate the mansion's power source, and as the group dispenses the search, the haunting melody resurfaces, controlling Sammy throughout the vampire bite. She transforms and attacks Peter, while Abigail revels in manipulating her, and Joey and Frank encounter Sammy, initially unaware of her transformation. When they recognize her, they flee, only to find themselves in the library again, and Abigail, speaking through Sammy, reveals her resentment toward the library where her father transformed her. In a desperate move, Joey uses a tray to reflect sunlight onto Sammy, causing her body to explode. The grim event unexpectedly triggers a secret door to open, and weary of another trap, Joey and Frank decide to venture through it. They navigate a corridor and find the mansion's control center, and Lambert, who's also a vampire. Lambert confronts Joey, revealing he was turned by Abigail 2 years earlier for helping Frank infiltrate the gang. Lambert, now loyal to Abigail's twisted games, has been trapping her father's enemies for her, and he tells Joey and Frank that Lazar, Abigail's powerful father, was on his way. Wanting to eliminate both Abigail and her father, Lambert offers Frank a deal: become a vampire and help him. Frank reluctantly agrees, and Lambert turns Frank into a vampire by making him drink his blood. Joey wakes up to see Frank's painful transformation, and once transformed, Lambert orders Frank to feed on Joey. And instead, Frank turns against Lambert, stabbing him with a stake and causing him to explode. Abigail bursts into the room, ready to attack, but Frank, now stronger, subdues her and begins to drain her blood. Joey then seizes the opportunity and disables the mansion's security system and tries to escape through the secret corridor, but the exit was locked. Meanwhile, Frank finishes feeding on Abigail and discards her lifeless form, and in despair, Joey calls her son, leaving a tearful voicemail, and Frank confronts Joey, pushing her back into the library and violently attacking her. At the last moment, Abigail, barely alive, intervenes, catching Joey, and weak but determined, Abigail pleads for Joey's help to defeat Frank, promising freedom in return. They band together against Frank, but he proves too strong, and after a fierce struggle, he knocks Abigail aside and pins Joey against a pillar with a stake through her shoulder. Frank, now fully embracing his new vampire strength, attacks Abigail again, biting her, and in a touching gesture, Abigail raises her pinky to Joey, reminding her of their promise. As soon as Abigail was subdued, Frank frees Joey from the stake and bites her neck before throwing her to the floor. As Joey wakes up, Frank tries to use his vampire powers to control her, forcing her to pick up the stake and attack Abigail. However, Joey was only pretending to be under his control. Seizing the moment, she suddenly turns and pushes Frank, allowing Abigail to pounce on him. While Frank and Abigail struggle, Joey quickly grabs the stake, and working together, she and Abigail overpower Frank, finally stabbing him, causing him to burst apart. After the fight, Joey fears she might turn into a vampire as well, but Abigail assures her that that won't happen since Frank, her maker, is now dead. True to her word, Abigail lets Joey go, urging her to reunite with her son. Just as Joey starts to leave, she feels a hand on her shoulder, and it was Lazar, Abigail's powerful father, revealing that he's gone by many names over the years. At first, he seems threatening, but Abigail steps in, defending Joey by saying that she saved her life and kept her company while he wasn't there. Moved by this, Lazar shows his thanks by kissing Joey's hand and letting her go, and with a sense of relief and a bit of normalcy, Joey returns to her van where she finds a leftover lollipop. The film then concludes as Joey, the sole survivor of this horror, enjoys a small amount of comfort and drives away from the mansion. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch our next recaps on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you on the next one.